people, oh yes, okay, we've got some more people joining. Brilliant. Okay. Okay, we'll give it another minute just in case there are any people quickly running to get a cup of tea or something. Okay. Lovely. So I'll start us off. Thank you everyone for joining us today for some bookish lunchtime discussion. We've got a brilliant panel of British-based young adult authors here today, the massive range of genres from contemporary to historical, thriller to horror to fantasy. We have a Jamaican-inspired island where warring witches ride giant panthers. We have a haunted rural American town that was once the setting for a horror movie, a claustrophobic and dangerous elite school in Nazi Germany, a realm ruled by black magic and gangs, two friends hiding dark secrets when an anonymous blog threatens to expose them, and the world we go to when we dream. I feel like I should be a salesman wearing a coat like that. Young adult we've got. Yeah, we've got the gamut of UK YA here, and I'm really excited to talk about the genre with you all. We'll have some time for Q&A towards the end, so if you have questions, do pop them in the Q&A chat box. Shall we start off by introducing ourselves and our books? I'll just go across my screen. I think first up I've got is Kat.
Hi everybody, I'm Kat Ellis. I'm the author of Harrow Lake, which you can see on the shelf there behind me with Howard the Hand helpfully pointing towards it. Harrow Lake is a horror thriller. It tells the story of a teenage girl named Lola, who is the daughter of a famous horror film director. She gets sent to stay with her estranged grandmother in the town of Harrow Lake, which is where her father's most famous horror film was made. And when she gets there, she realizes that that horror film is not the scariest thing about the town by any means. This is the town where her mother disappeared 12 years ago, and it's a town full of legends about creepy monsters and disappearing girls.
Brilliant. Yasmin.
Hi everyone, my name is Yasmin Rahman. I am the author of All the Things We Never Said, which is also on my wall at the back there. This is a book about three girls who are struggling with their mental health and find each other on the internet, and very dark, sad things happen. My next book is out in July. I don't have a proper copy, but I have a tiny sticker here with a very pretty cover. This one is about a girl called Amani, who is a British Muslim, as are most characters in my books. Her parents, she's hiding a deep, dark secret about domestic abuse in her family, and she's worried that it's going to get out and everyone's going to tear her family apart. And then a anonymous blog starts up at her school, and she's worried about that secret coming out. Yeah.
Amazing. And it's out in July, you said?
Yes, July 22nd.
Brilliant. Ciannon.
Hi everyone, I am Ciannon Smart and I'm the author of Witches Steeped in Gold, my debut YA Jamaican-inspired fantasy that released April 20th, and so just last month. And this follows two witches from enemy orders who are forced to unite in order to take down a mutual threat. It is my first fantasy, and the sequel will release next year.
Brilliant. Matt.
Oh, hello. My name is Matt Killeen. I am the author of Orphan Monster Spy and Devil Darling Spy. Orphan Monster Spy is the story of a Jewish German girl who is orphaned in an escape attempt at the start of the Second World War. She runs into a British agent who she saves, and then she goes to work for him undercover in a school for the daughters of elite Nazis. The sequel, Devil Darling Spy, with Sarah now a well-experienced spy. They go on the track of a rogue scientist who is running horrific human experiments in West Africa or Southwest Africa, and yeah, and it's the darker Empire Strikes Back of the story.
Nice.
Yep.
And Alexandra.
Hi everyone, I'm Alexandra Christo and I'm the author of Into the Crooked Place, which is very shiny, and the sequel City of Spells, which came out just this March actually. And this is a story about 4 black magic dealers in a city where magic is a tangible thing that you can buy and sell. And they discover that their criminal kingpin has developed a new kind of magical elixir that crosses the line even for them. So these 4 crooks team up to save the world instead of trying to destroy it for once.
Amazing. And then there's me. I'm Holly Race, and my YA urban fantasy Midnight's Twins was published last summer. The next book in the trilogy, A Gathering Midnight, is going to be published next month. It's set between our world and the world we go to when we dream. We follow twins, Fern and Ollie, who hate each other and who have grown up in East London believing that their mother died in her sleep when they were babies. But then they're recruited into a secret army known as the Knights, who defend dreamers from their nightmares, and they start to realise that there might have been more to their mother's death than they had realised. So that's us. Shall we talk a bit about YA as a genre? I kind of wanted to talk about this because I heard someone who used to work in publishing say quite recently that he used to classify anything without romance as middle grade, anything with kissing as teen, and anything with sex as young adult. And I mean, I have my own reasons maybe disagreeing with that, but I'm sort of interested to know how you guys would define YA as a genre. Anyone wanted to jump in on that?
I can go. Break the silence. I think the great thing about YA is that it isn't a genre. It combines many genres. It has romance and adventure and fantasy, and it can step across leaps and bounds. And I think the only thing in my mind that defines young adult is a story that follows the stories of young adults, of people within a certain age range, from, you know, early teens to late teens, I would say. And I think any story that follows that fits into the young adult range, whether it's to do with magic and monsters or romance or what have you. I think it all just kind of is knuckled in, and that's what makes YA so great, is that it's so varied and it can appeal to so many different ages of teens and teens going through so many different experiences, because it can cover such a broad spectrum.
Yeah, I agree with you. Sorry, Matt.
No, go for it. You beat me.
I think you're right, Alexandra, in that it's just about that period of your life where everything is on the cusp. You're on the cusp of adulthood, and everything seems so unsure of yourself and what the world is going to be like. And just that uncertainty is what I like to read about and write about in my books. In that, there's so much going on, and you're not quite an adult yet, so you don't feel equipped to deal with it, and you're not a child anymore. So it's just that in between, I think. And the books that we've all written cover so many different themes and topics and issues that I think is a great way to help teens who are going through certain things. They can't reach out to other people, they feel like they can't, but you can always pick up a book and very safely explore that, which is what I particularly love about YA.
Yeah, I was madly trying to come off mute because I was going like, YA is not a genre. That's because essentially it's a marketing term in many ways, because it's such a huge spectrum of possibilities. The only in these many discussions that we have, I think the only thing that anyone has ever really agreed on is that YA has a teenage protagonist. But even then, there is Codename Verity and Tamar are YA books. They do not have teenage protagonists as such. I remember I was fortunate enough to meet Mal Peet before he passed away at a workshop, and I talked about that with him, and I said, oh yeah, my lecturer says that Tamar isn't a YA book, and he goes, that really pees me off. He didn't say pee, and he says the only thing about YA that anyone can agree on is nobody knows what YA is. So I think it is, I think a successful YA book in the modern era has to have a teenage protagonist. But other than that, it really anything goes, because we are sort of working on a such a huge spectrum of we are dealing with the experiences of being a teenager, with the issues that arise from that, and this is all a vehicle for that. And one reason that YA is so successful outside of teenagers, with older adults and older people, is that we've all been teenagers, so we all understand. There hits a point where people start going like, oh, I couldn't enjoy this book because the protagonist made stupid choices, and I was like going, well, then you have aged out of YA.
Yes, helpfully answering one of our Q&A questions already there, Matt. Why do you think so many adults enjoy reading YA?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's great.
I got overexcited.
Do you guys think that YA has changed much over the last decade or so?
I think that there are more discussions now about that sweet spot between YA and middle grade. So writing towards readers who perhaps aren't, well, I write fantasy, so I'm like readers who perhaps don't want to read about someone being disemboweled in the upper range of YA, but still want to read about people who are wielding swords and doing cool things. So I think there's been lots of discussion on Twitter in particular about that, maybe finding a space in between YA and middle grade and actually defining it, and having publishers define it for the readers as well as the authors who don't necessarily lean toward the upper end of the YA scale.
Yeah, because there's a huge, me at 12, 13 is not the same person as I was when I was 18 at all. There is a huge difference in sort of, who we are at that in across the YA spectrum, I suppose, isn't there?
I know when I was a teen. Sorry.
Oh no, you
Alexandra.
go. No.
I know when I was a teenager that I was reading books which I suppose would technically be either shelved in middle grade or YA now, but those labels didn't exist back then. The stories themselves and the themes that they covered were the same, but now it seems that the focus is more on, making sure that they're shelved correctly so that people looking for certain, and I don't even know how, people who are looking at YA or middle grade or that, is it teen that we're calling that sort of sweet spot that Ciannon just mentioned in between those two? How do they know what the definition is if we, as authors, can't strictly define, what is YA? I think it's making it a bit harder for readers to find what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think because young adult stretches so broadly across the age range, there's also been that discussion for a while now about new adult needing to come back in to cover the older end of what some people might still consider YA, which is like early 20s. Some people are like, well, that's not YA, that's NA. But then NA has kind of like faded a bit and isn't as highly published. So everything seems to be published as YA if it falls between kind of 13 to 25. And some people want that little kind of, for the upper end, like, no, hang on, a new category. So I think, YA's changed a lot because it is so broad. It's hard to know how to categorize everything and if everything should technically be YA or if it should be middle grade or new adult.
Yeah. And should we move on? Should we talk about our writing processes? I know some of us are plotting books at the moment. And hiding said plots.
Just plotting in general.
Let's go through, what were your different paths to publication? Does anyone want to sort of start off with that?
I don't mind going first. How did Witches end up getting published? How did I get into publishing? I always wanted to be a writer from the moment I realized that you could write for a living, that the books I was reading were being written by people who did this as a job or their main profession. And it took me a really long time, and I had to learn a lot of hard lessons about the difference between being a good writer and being a good storyteller. And it's still a lesson that I am learning. I think it's like a perennial thing that I'm going to experience hopefully throughout my career. Hopefully I get a career. And I wrote Witches out of wish fulfillment. I wrote the book that I wanted to read. I wanted it to be dark. I wanted it to have witches and magic and giant panthers that you could ride. And then I signed with an agent with this book, and then I sold the book later that same year to my US and UK publisher. So it was definitely, I think there's a lot of emphasis on overnight success, and people who, if you don't have this announced in like Entertainment Weekly, or if you're not coming out of the gate having everything sort of sparkling immediately, that you're not successful, or that you're not like doing well in publishing, is definitely a myth. For most of us, I would say it's like a long process. So I wanted to write from the age of 15, and then I sold my first book series at 25. So yeah, took a while. I had to learn some hard lessons, but then also it happened. It doesn't necessarily happen for everyone who wants to be a writer, be an author.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Quite similarly, kind of always wanted to write, and I always thought that it wasn't a possibility. It's just something other people did. I'll read the books, someone else will write them. And then I think it started to become more of a reality for me when I discovered that you could actually study creative writing at university, and I didn't know that was a thing. I always thought that like you'd not have to, but English literature was the way to go, or English language and those kind of courses. And when I discovered that you could actually you could learn to write, and it covered kind of fiction, non-fiction, script writing, all these different types of writing, that was when I thought, oh, hang on, this is a possibility for me. And that taught me a lot actually as well, about how to write without overwriting, and how to stop trying to be like literary and trying to describe a chair in an artsy fartsy way for 20 pages, and to focus actually on telling a story and on making people care for characters and care for their journey. And I wrote my first book and sent it to like, I don't even know how many agents, a lot, painful amount. And then one agent saw potential in my writing, and then I accidentally sent her basically another manuscript, and she ended up liking that one more. And that ended up being my debut novel, To Kill a Kingdom, which got published. So the actual original manuscript that I was submitting, it's on a shelf somewhere in the void of my laptop. So yeah, so that's that. And I think, so yeah, like Ciannon said, a lot of important lessons. One being that, you know, it's not always on the first try, it's not always on the 10th try, and it's not about kind of being a bestseller within 5 minutes. It's about, like you said, building a career and kind of taking your time and making sure that you craft a story that's important to you and important to readers, and that you want to read, and that you enjoy writing, and not just trying to kind of force a story that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. When I went down I did an MA in creative writing, and again, because I didn't really know that you could do that, that was good. And I think that everybody needs an MA, but whatever it is, that is the MA equivalent for you, you know, because that made me read again properly. You know, it says, here is a book and you must read it by next week, and so that kind of got me back into understanding my craft. And, you know, again, deadlines, you know, you must write 2,000 words by this time next week, and regardless. And that was really good for me, because otherwise I could not have done that. But very important in my career was Scooby, which was the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, because I went to the conferences and I did the workshops, and I went on the retreats, and I met other authors, and I did the crit groups and all of that. And that is where I met the editor who introduced me to my agent, who got me my deal. And like, it's having that kind of organization around you is absolutely, I think, essential. I don't think it can be done alone. I think you need to hang out with creative people as much as possible. So
I think it's really funny that we have so many of us have MAs in creative writing, because I think absolutely, as you're saying, Matt, it's not something that you need. You know, I know so many people who have managed it without having that, but I actually have 2 MAs in writing, because I I'm not like, I feel like an imposter sometimes because everyone's like, I wanted to write as a child, but that was not me. I only got into writing when I was in my undergrad degree, where I went to do English literature, as I thought was the way to go. And they were like, you can do a minor subject. And I was like, oh, okay, let's try creative writing. And I fell in love with it there. And when I graduated, I was not ready to become an adult. So I was like, oh, let me just carry on studying. So I did an MA in creative writing. And I think what's stuck out to me for my journey is how I've grown as a writer. So that first MA, I was writing adult because I didn't know that young adult existed in the I wasn't, your teachers, I think when you're being taught by adult writers, they sort of don't, well, back in the day, they weren't so open about what else is out there. And I was reading young adult, but I didn't think I was clever enough to write it because it's something that I loved so much. And I thought, okay, that's like top tier and I can't get to that tier. But so I was writing adult and like, it was just not very me, but I had a young adult voice, as my tutor told me. So she was like, if you love it so much, why aren't you writing it? And that changed things for me, absolutely. And so I wrote a book like Alexandra. I wrote a book and I queried it and it went nowhere because it was terrible. And so then I tried to become an adult and I got a job in an office. And then I got bored again. And I was like, you know what, I want to do another MA. And there's this fantastic master's degree in writing for young people at Bath Spa University, which I'd seen everywhere online. And I was like, this is my last chance. I will go into this course, and it has excellent links to the industry and it's full of, children's writers, which I want to surround myself with. So I did that degree for a year and it was amazing. And I really found who I wanted to be as a writer and my voice and things like that. And I think that's something, I'm only on my second book, but I've grown so much since then. And I think that's the most exciting part of the journey, is figuring out who you are as a writer rather than, how you got here. It's where you go from there, I guess. Yeah.
How have you figured yourself out? I still haven't figured myself out.
I mean, I'm sure in a day or two I'll be like, I don't know what's, yeah.
For me, I realised this morning, actually, my first young adult novel was published 7 years ago this month. So that's quite a while. I think a lot of people might have heard of Harrow Lake, but maybe not necessarily my debut, which was Blackfin Sky, which was published by a small press called Firefly Press. And then another novel that I published with them subsequently was called Purge, and I had one out in the States called Breaker, and then Harrow Lake is actually my fourth novel. I came quite late to writing, I think. When I was in school, I didn't have it in my head that I was going to be a writer. Maybe because, being up in North Wales, we didn't really have author visits and stuff when I was at school. It just never really occurred to me. Then I went to uni and, a bit like Yasmin, realised there that I could do my dissertation as a creative writing piece. So it was there that I thought, oh, actually, I've always liked writing short stories and stuff like that. So I'll do that because I know I will actually finish writing it. So, at uni, that was something I needed to keep in mind. And then I did that about 20,000 word, I think it was, a story for my dissertation. And there I realised, like, oh, I can write, sort of longer pieces of work. So after uni, I kind of got a bit burned out on reading, essentially, because I was studying English literature. So I didn't actually read a book for a few years after I left uni, which is horrible to admit as an author. But it was YA, when I picked up, YA books, that got me back into reading. So that sort of enthusiasm that I got from reading YA books was what made me think, actually, if I'm going to give writing a go, this is the sort of thing that I want to write. So that kind of led me into it. And then it was a long path of writing failed manuscripts and then finally getting one that was good enough to get an agent and then publishing deal. And then many years later, here we are.
I think my pacing was slightly off and slightly different to some of you guys, and that I like you, Yasmin, I didn't really want to be a writer when I was younger. I always knew I wanted to work in the creative industries in some way, and I really loved working with writers. So I ended up working as a script editor and a dramaturg for about a decade. And very much was like, well, this is really hard. I see how hard it is for these writers that I'm working with, and they're amazing. There's no way I could possibly do anything like these guys are doing. But I had this idea for Midnight's Twins, and I'd been playing around with it for years and years and years, until my husband was like, just write it, for God's sake. So I ended up doing the Faber Academy's writing a novel course and finished a decent-ish early draft of it. And as part of that course, you kind of get an extract of your book sent out to lots of agents, and I got a bit of interest, and at the same time as I was getting that interest, I got made redundant from my job and found out I was pregnant. And it was like, oh, okay, this feels like maybe a sign that you're not going to go back to a full-time stable job for a little while. Maybe you should concentrate on the book and see where it goes. So I signed with an agent a few months later, and I think it's a bit embarrassing to admit this, but because there was quite a lot of interest from agents, I think I drank my own Kool-Aid a little bit, and I definitely was like, oh, this is it for me. I've made it. Brilliant, sorted, career into the stratosphere. And then it didn't quite happen like that. You know, we were waiting a couple of months, a little while to find the right publisher. And about 2 weeks after I gave birth, kind of baby latched to my boob, I got a phone call saying, you've got a 3-book deal with my wonderful publisher. And I think it was a real lesson, that kind of purgatory between a book going out and finding a publisher, of, you know, you don't, like some of you guys have said, it's not about the kind of instant success. It's about building the long-term career. It's about finding the right people to be around you and help you on that way, because it's not a solitary process, is it? There's that kind of myth of the lonely writer, but actually there's a whole team of people who are helping you and giving you notes and marketing you and doing, you know, their best in the shadows, almost, in a very thankless task in some ways, I think, to kind of put your book out there and make it the best it can be. And all I needed was my wonderful editor and my team. I didn't need anything else. You know, I've got the right agent, I've got the right editor, and it's those connections and finding the right connections that I think is actually the most important thing in a lot of ways. Just because we've been talking about MAs and things, we've got a question saying, is it necessary to have an MA, or are there other less expensive ways to learn? Don't know if anyone wanted to come in on that.
Yeah, I'll come in. Absolutely not necessary at all. The best way to learn how to write is to just read. I mean, like I said, degrees and stuff work for some people, it helps some people. It's not a requirement at all. I think the great thing about writing is that there is no requirement. You can write. If you want to write, then you can write. If you have a story to tell, you can tell it. And there's not like a little checkbox or any kind of list or any kind of qualifications that you must have until you're allowed to tell your story. If you have a story, tell it. And yeah, just read books in the genre you want to read books about the things you want to read about, and learn from other writers that way. And I think that's the best way to kind of grow your craft and stuff like that. So yeah, please don't think you have to go to uni. If you want to, definitely do. If you don't want to, definitely don't.
Yeah, I do not have an MFA. I read loads, and I was an English teacher like straight out of university, and that for me, those were like the most informative years, because I mean, in some cases the curtains are just blue, but in other cases the writer has definitely made those curtains blue for a reason. So breaking down techniques and discussing books with my students, that really helped me think about how much goes into telling a story. And it was like you said earlier, Alexandra, just about writing characters that people care about and creating settings that people are invested in. Teaching really taught me how much goes on behind the scenes, and how much we as readers don't necessarily receive in the book, but the work went into it behind the scenes. So you don't have to, I think here's the thing, I looked at MFAs, doing them before I signed with my agent. I was like, oh, do I need to do this? And in some cases, I think it's good because it puts you in direct contact with agents. Like there's like often showcases and stuff, but there are other platforms where you can talk with agents, or you can just cold query. I cold queried both times because I'm represented by someone else now, and I cold queried both times and signed with an agent. So I think it almost depends on what you kind of want, what your process you want it to look like. Writing is definitely, you can personalize it to you. If you want a cold query. If you want a little bit of help, MFA, or maybe look at other mentoring programs, or like Matt said, there's the SCBWI. I probably butchered the ordering of those letters, but there are lots of different ways that you can sort of make a community and get into writing without having to go to university.
Yeah, I think the community is really important. I think that nearly all writers can improve by doing some critting. A crit group, I think, is kind of essential, because if you look at your own work, you don't know what's the matter with it. You read somebody else's, you go, oh yeah, I know what's the matter there, and that could be fixed and that can be done. And when you do that, it helps your own writing. And also you just getting constant feedback, and that's really good. And then just people to Scooby Christmas party, and there's always people crying in the corner, because this is just your chance to it all just leaks out of you. You need somebody around who understands, because as supportive as our partners are, unless they are in the business, they're not going to really understand why you've just been pushed over the edge by something that somebody said. And like, I think a community is important. Also, it's good if you are too focused in on your own work, and then you go into publication and suddenly you don't get to choose your title, and there's an editor, and then there's covers coming in, and like, you will struggle with that if you are not used to bouncing ideas off people. That's my view anyway.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Matt. There were no writing groups or anything in my area where I could go and actually meet other writers in person, but all of my critique partners are people that I've met online, and there's such a great online YA community. People, on Twitter, on Facebook groups, things like that, who you can, make connections with and swap chapters with, and find out if you're a good fit for, being critique partners in the long term. And I know that the books that I've written wouldn't have gotten to the point where they are without my critique partners. Read any of them and you see in the acknowledgements at the back that there's a big list of thank yous to my critique partners who've helped me out just massively. I think that I don't have a master's degree in creative writing or anything, actually. So yeah, I think probably, as Matt was saying there, having the critique partners, I think, is the most important way that you can improve your writing. If you want a way of doing it that isn't, going back into education or something that's quite expensive to do.
Yeah. And before we open things up to Q&A, do you have any advice to people writing YA at the moment? That maybe isn't about critique partners and MAs and things? Is there anything that maybe surprised you when you started writing YA or publishing YA that you think people should know about in advance?
Oh no, sorry, go ahead.
Go on. I was just going to say, I think keep the faith a little bit. I think it's a difficult time one way or another for YA, and the kind of things that YA does. There are a lot of us who are being told that you can't write anything dark right now because the world is too messed up and no one's interested. And that's hard for YA, because I think we deal almost exclusively in darkness. And I think we haven't had a big tentpole success like Hunger Games or Twilight or in recent times to support us. So I think keep the faith, write the book you want to write. If you are writing YA, that's what you want to do, to keep at it. It's cyclical, I believe, and I think our time is going to come around again.
That was essentially what I was going to say. Yeah, sorry.
No, you go. You go first.
Yeah, just that. Don't write to fulfill a trend. If you think that things things right now are about unicorns or whatever, don't write for unicorns because they sold like 2 years ago. So write what you want to read, and you'll never know, you know, you could be part of that next wave. Like Witches Steeped in Gold, I just wrote the book I wanted to read, and then there's like 50 witch books releasing this year, weirdly, that were all sold like over 2 years ago. So yeah, write what you want to read, and as Matt said, just be patient. YA is a little bit of it's always a bit of a you know what show, I feel. So kind of just ride the wave and things will come back around.
It'll work out eventually. Yeah, I mean, echoing all that, and also try not to compare your first draft of a book to someone's finished book that has been going through like 30 rounds of edits with like a team of 30 people editing it. Just write your book, don't compare it. That book has had, like Holly was saying earlier, a team of people on it. So yeah, just write your story, focus on the story you want to tell, and fall in love with your book. If you don't like your book, nobody else will either. So make sure you like it and that you're enjoying what you're doing. And yes, sometimes it is going to be really hard and you're going to have a breakdown over like a bowl of coffee. But as long as in the end you love it, that's all that matters. Oh, and also get Scrivener. It's a great writing software. I recommend it to everyone. It really changed me. For someone like me who's like has kind of minor OCD, it really helped me in regards to kind of organizing things and like not having 50,000 folders, which makes me really uncomfortable, and being able to put all my stuff all in one place. And then I don't have any excuses for like, oh, I have to look at this image for this or look at this image for that, because all of my worlds are there. I can access everything really easily, and it helps me organize my very, very frazzled mind. So I think that Scrivener is a great tool for you if you kind of don't know, you have so many ideas and you don't know where to put them. I think that will kind of help you to organize your thoughts so you can put them into an actual book. I promise it's not sponsored.
Even if you don't use Scrivener, I think it's the law that you have to own a copy that you're too frightened to open. Yeah.
Yeah, I do not use it. You would all, Alexandra, you would hate my graveyard of documents, and I plan by hand. And yeah, it's just, but I know where my hot mess. I know everything is in that hot mess. But yeah, Scrivener.
If it works for you, that works for you, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm not really a Scrivener user, except that I do dabble with it for like research, so I can categorize things in it that way. I've used Word for years and years and years, so I did try using Scrivener to write the actual manuscript, but I just could not break that habit. But for anybody who hasn't given Scrivener a go, if you want to, they do a 30-day free trial, which is really handy, so you can have a go with it and see if it's for you.
Just wanted to pay us for this ad. They need to pay us for this ad.
But Word works as well, you know.
I'm a big fan of just finding whatever tools work for you, and my tools seem to change on like a weekly basis depending on how much I think I've got writer's block, because really there's no such thing as writer's block, right? You've just got to put words on paper. So as you can probably see, I've got a lot of post-it note stuff, which at the moment I'm very into my post-it note plotting, and in about a month's time I'll probably go back to Scrivener plotting and writing, and sometimes I will write by hand and put a big cross through the page before I write to try and like get thoughts of this has to be perfect out of my head before I write it. So yeah, I think just be kind to yourself, and if you're the kind of person who likes to have a routine and know exactly how you do something, then great. But if you don't, just use whatever tools come to you and work for you in the moment. And also celebrate all of the little wins, because I think I don't know about you guys, I have massive imposter syndrome, and I am constantly, as Alexandra was saying, kind of comparing myself to other authors and going, oh, why can't I be as good as them? And actually, yeah, we're all on a process, and it never really ends. You're never going to get to the top of being a writer, because there's no such thing. So if you manage to write 200 words today, then celebrate it. And if you were brave enough to send off a query to an agent, then celebrate that. And yeah, lots of little wins, and take the time to just kind of appreciate them and sit in them for a bit before moving on to the next rung of the ladder. Shall we think we've got about 10 minutes left. So shall we have a look at our Q&A? We've got a question from Tina saying, really interesting discussion on the label YA. Do you have thoughts on what would be a better description so non-YA readers don't miss out on great stories? Also, do you feel as YA writers you ever feel under pressure to write a crossover book? Anyone has any thoughts on that?
I
think we're...
Oh, sorry. I keep jumping in on other
That's all right. Go
Sorry.
for it.
Just the second part of that question, I don't ever feel pressured to write something that I wouldn't want to write. I think that it's like what Yasmin was saying, she's kind of found her niche and she's found what she wants to do. I don't know if I'm quite there yet, but I do know that I would never force myself to write something that I didn't want to. Writing is tough anyway, and if you're sort of writing something that you're not invested in, something that doesn't resonate with you and what you want to read, it's just even more difficult. So I just think that don't feel pressured to produce things that you aren't comfortable with. Yeah,
I think if anything, we're under pressure not to write crossover books. I think a crossover book is something I think that happens almost by accident. It's a marketing decision that gets made further down the line. They go, we're going to put a new cover on it. And I think the pressure is to actually be something that is easy to package. It goes here, it goes there, it's got this cover, it's got this marketing. That's the pressure we're under, if anything. I think that we all kind of write these wonderful big, big stories that then get like, they go, could you take out the people eating human flesh bit so we can put it on these shelves? Yes, okay. I think that's the pressure. We're pressured to sort of actually conform more to something that is easy, because every step of the way we have to sell to an agent. The agent has to then to sell to an editor. The editor has to sell to their marketing. Marketing has to sell to the bookshops, and it needs to be nice and easy. And I think that's the pressure that we're on, if anything, to sort of conform a little bit more. And I think that as to the first bit of the question, we are, I think YA has a problem because YA is so broad, and it does leak into teen and it does go through to adult, and yet it's now in this little kind of little bookshelf off by itself. It's not attached to the kids and it's not attached to the literary fiction stuff. And I think if anything, we need to start carving that up a little bit into other marketing categories. But I don't know. What do I know?
Do you think we should be pushing to have our YA horrors put in the horror genre and our YA fantasies put in the fantasy genre, and do away with YA sections in bookshops completely?
I think that actually we need to be, physical bookshops need to go over to here, and there's like a stack of books going like, are you ready to move on to this? And then in the YA that leads into litfic, and litfic has so that we're actually like moving people, we need to sort of follow, I don't know.
He wants a book maze, essentially. Every bookshop's going to be like a little maze and you wander through and
yeah, like a flow chart kind of thing. That's what I think anyway.
I would totally go to that bookshop. Then we have a question from Julia. Without the selling advantages that middle grade books have, like Waterstone's Book of the Month, and parents playing as much of a role in book buying for teenagers, what have you found is the best way to get your books out there to the audience?
I feel like that's not a question for the authors, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a publishing question. There's only so much we can control, isn't there? And I think there's only so much posting about it on Twitter or on Instagram can do. It's obviously good to do that, but I think it's more of a publishing thing. It's good to talk to other authors and make friends with other authors and build a community around you, but I don't know if that necessarily helps with sales or anything like that.
I
Yeah,
feel
I've heard
completely ill-equipped to. Sorry, Kat, go on.
Now, I've heard authors say that, you know, different methods work, you know, brilliantly for them. But I'm not sure that there's ever been like one magic way to get books out there and, you know, have suddenly a massive rush of sales. Lots of authors say that going to do lots of school visits is, you know, the way that they connect with readers. So they sell a lot of books doing that. Others are, you know, like the first ones to get onto the new social media platform. They're on TikTok, you know, they're doing everything, you know, getting out there on these new platforms, and which isn't for me, I have to say. But I haven't found the magic way to get books out there so that all teenagers will see them or all readers will see them. I don't know, I've tried different things, different books.
I also think there's a danger with things like Waterston's Book of the Month, as it basically says, right, there are all the others.
Oh, sorry, Matt, your I don't know if anyone else going this, your volume is going in and out. Might need to repeat.
All right, let's try that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I apologise. I was just saying there's a danger really with the Waterston's Book of the Month system in the fact that there are 11 middle grade books every year that sell, and then the others don't go anywhere near them. And I think that that's potentially siloing as well. I mean, I think it's a shame there isn't some, you know, there should be an array of things like that.
I think it's good that kind of like, I think as well it's important not to focus too much on like, how can I best sell my book, how can I best tell everyone about my book so I get the best sales and I sell 20 million copies or whatever. I think, as we've all been saying throughout this entire thing, the important thing is to write your story and to focus on your story and build a community and connect with the readers that do love your book, and readers that love your book, they'll tell your friends about their book. So I think that kind of the community thing is important. You know, be kind to your readers, respect your readers, talk to your readers, have a conversation, talk to other writers, and kind of, yeah, build your group. And I think, you know, your story will get out there and it will reach people. And even if it doesn't reach 1 million people, it will reach people that do love it. And if 1 million people don't love it, that doesn't matter, because someone out there will love it and it will be that person's favorite book. And I think that counts for something.
I also think that, you know, YA readers are very smart and they know what they want in books, so they will actively seek your book out. And I think that's the most important thing, that people who want your book can find it. You know, just quick Google. I think they're clever enough to find it themselves.
I've just seen in the chat, we've got one. If you're writing YA fantasy, do you fall in love with your world and find it hard to come back to earth in the same way that happens to readers? Don't know if Ciannon or Alexandra.
My worlds are often very brutal, so I am very happy to exist in this world and not have to endure the things I put my characters through in the worlds that I create. So I mean, I enjoy torturing them, but I'm very happy not to exist in the worlds I create. Too much trouble.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, my debut was about an evil siren killer who literally ripped out people's hearts and buried them under her bedroom floor. So I'm kind of glad that her and I aren't friends or anything, or don't exist in the same world. That's fine by me. And I mean, Crooked is about like black magic dealers who literally kind of sell each other these dark charms and try and manipulate the world. So it's fun to dive into it. Like Ciannon said, it's fun to go in, play a little magic, be kind of like evil and naughty, and then dive back out and kind of sit and watch Netflix and relax in the comfort of my own non-murdery home. Brilliant. I love my characters, but I just wouldn't want to be anywhere near them in real life.
That's so interesting. I've had completely the opposite to you guys. I think maybe because I'm an only child and sort of grew up in my imagination and creating worlds that I wanted to escape into, because I was quite a lonely teenager. So my world is definitely one that I'd be like, yes, I would love to go there for all its dangers. Just let me live in an inn. That would be great. It's beautiful, and I get to ride horses all day, and there are friends who accept me for who I am. And yeah, I definitely find it difficult to come out of that. And it's like, oh, real life. Okay, no horses, sad pandas.
I think my 5-year-old the other day was like, oh, I wish Star Wars was real, Daddy. And I was like, what? The murder of all the children and the domination by a fascist power? Oh, the lightsabers, Daddy.
I think we've got time for maybe one more question. how ready does your novel need to be before submitting to an agent? I keep workshopping and editing the novel, and I'm not sure if to wait before submitting or submit while I'm editing.
That's a tough...
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Kat.
I was just going to say it needs to be really ready. If you've done as much work as you can possibly do on it yourself, that's the point, I think, at which you need to submit it to an agent or an editor if you're going direct to a publisher. I think if you're still at a point where you can do more work on it, there's no point rushing to send it out until it's in the best shape that it can possibly be, because you want, you know, the agent or the editor to be looking at that and saying, yeah, I've got to have this because it's amazing, not looking at problems with it that you could have fixed before you sent it to them.
Yeah, I think if you're just tweaking word choices and your sentences, then it's ready to go. But if there are still big structural changes you can make and sort of character arcs that need to be reassessed, then it's not quite ready to go out yet.
Yeah, I mean, I'm echoing that. I think as well, if you've read it and you think you've done all you can do, and then you give it to someone else and let them read it, and you've taken all the advice from them that you can do, and then I think it's ready to go out. I think it's important before you send it just to have someone else read it, just for perspective, and they might, this is Matt was saying, they might pick up on things that you might not have picked up on. So it's just good to always have someone else just give it a read and check. But if they give you the go ahead and you feel like you've done all you can do, there's just no benefit in to go over and over and over and keep moving commas and going on thesaurus.com and changing a word to something else. Like, just send it, just go for it. You might as well. There's always time. If an agents perhaps don't like it, there's always time for you to go back, re-edit it, and then send it out again. You know, it's not like you can only ever send it out once, and then if it doesn't get picked up, then your life is over forever and you can never be a writer. There's always going to be more chances. So I would say bite the bullet and don't over edit it and overthink it too much.
Learn the value of good enough is also, you know, otherwise you would never get anything done. Like, working in historical is terrible because I'm always thinking, I haven't researched this enough, and that means I just never get any work done. So yeah, you at some point you need to go, right, you know, especially because if you've got a manuscript and you're showing it to lots of people, you're going to get conflicting advice, and knowing whose advice to take and who's not. And when you go, actually, you know, I think it's okay, and that's the, grab that and hold on to that and go with that, I think.
That's quite a valuable feeling, I think, to hold on to throughout the writing journey as well, isn't it? You are going to get a lot of different opinions kind of thrown at you during the entire publishing process, and at its core you've just got to be like, no, this is something that I'm proud of. I feel like I've done the work that I can do on it. I'm at a stage where I'm just making it different, not better. It's time, kind of thing, and then you move on to the next project, and that's how you build a career. I think maybe I've only been doing it a few years. I think that's all we've got time for, guys. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us and watching and asking questions. Thank you to Kat Ellis, Yasmin Rahman, Ciannon Smart, Matt Killeen and Alexandra Christo. It's been so lovely chatting to you all. And I think this is going to be available on YouTube, and we're all on social media of various sorts at times if you want to follow up or follow us there.
Thanks so much, Holly.
Thank you, Holly, for sharing. You did great.